So I think this week, um, I've handed out a assessment on statutory interpretations, and this video is basically going to be going through some things to help guide you through being able to do this easier. Um, but if you do struggle still, do um do send me an email or contact me because I'm always willing to help with any issues that you might be having. Um, okay, so this week I've asked I've asked people to be able to analyze a piece of mock legislation, and I really want to go into where do we get our information from in the law, basically, right? And I'm just going to go to because I want to have a look at some legislation just for a second. Now, I know this bill's not proceeding, but this is going to be very important. So I'm just going to add this on my shared screen. Share. All right. So this week's assessment was about how to use secondary sources of information. All right. So for this hypothetical scenario, I'm going to put it to you that your client has been charged under this act that's not going through. So this is a mock scenario. So we're going to be pretending that your client has now been charged under this legislation here. All right. So first off, we have to go and find the piece of legislation, and let's say your client, you need to be able to interpret the act. So you need to be able to find what part of the act your client has been charged on. Right? So I was just waiting for that to come up. So if we go here, this is really important, right? So I'm just going to zoom this in for a second so I could see it because I'm blind to that. So I need to find out, okay, what is the purpose of this bill? All right. Now, the reason why I've chose this bill too is because it's very vague, right? It's very vague. So it talks about royal assent, which is very important because nothing comes into power unless it is that broadcasting services. So let's say your client has done Chapter 10. They've done digital communications, and they send a Facebook message, and the Facebook message could be classed as misinformation or disinformation. Let's just say that, right? So now we need to go and find what that means in this, what the description of misinformation and disinformation, right? View that full screen, it doesn't bloody work. So, okay, so let's see. What does this say? The definitions, okay. So it defines aspects, access, approved, Australia, connective content, uh, data access, digital communications, digital. So this information, okay, so this is going to describe to me what disinformation is, right? What is that exactly, right? What does that mean in an act, right? So this would be 13 subclause 13.2. Okay. The standard of misinformation, which is 1, 2, determined under the division. Okay. Private messages. Okay, let's see if we can find on this where it describes what misinformation exactly is. So we're going to need to do that. Meaning of interactive features. Meaning of digital communication. Provide meaning of using misinformation. So, okay, yeah. Objects of this part is to enable the end users to better understand the accuracy of and credibility of content dismayed or whatever, using digital communication platforms, particularly content that purports to be factual and authoritative, and to ensure digital communication platform providers publish policies and information on policy approaches in relation to take steps to ensure transparency. Okay, so then, okay, caused to or contributed to misinformation. So it doesn't really describe. This is where your problem is here. First off, right? It's not describing. Do I get this? So I'll go like this, so I can highlight it. But it says if you contribute to misinformation, right, or disinformation, this is going to be important because this is what your client's been, for this situation, this is what your client's been charged under, right? It doesn't actually define, and I'm trying to find a definition of, okay, for this purpose, the scheduled dismantling of content using digital service is misinformation on digital service if the content contains information that is reasonably verifiably false, misleading, or deceptive. That's A. The content is provided on a digital service to one or more end users. 2. The provision of the content on the digital service is reasonably likely here. I'm going to use red for this one, likely, right? Because that's very vague here. That is likely to cause or contribute to serious harm, right? So I want to highlight that in red because that's very vague. What do you mean by likely to cause? Likely. What, it's so vague, right? So I'm going to argue this in court, right? So obviously this bill didn't get through, which is really good. Deceptive, and the content is provided on digital services to one or more end users. Okay, so let's say your client has been charged under this, and now you need to kind of build a case for your client. So I'm going to be arguing the vague language. So, what are some ways that I can gain extra knowledge or extra leverage in court that I can use to sway a magistrate to make a better decision for the policy? So, I'm going to go to uh, this for a second. I'm just going to share it in a minute once it loads up. Now, there are a couple of secondary sources that we can go to, but this is the one that I want you to focus on for now, for this. And it's going to be important too. So, cancel that. Just give me seconds. The perils of technology. It's both good. Do this instead. Okay, I'm going to share this now. So if we go down here on the parliamentary website, this is what you want to be looking at here, the explanatory memorandum, right? Now, what this is, it's the discussion in Parliament that when they're arguing the bill, they're discussing what they want it to do, what the meaning of it is, right? And this is another way that you can inform yourself as a lawyer to argue a case, right? So, how do we figure out what the meaning of likely is? What is likely to cause harm, right? So, let's say your client has made a post about a politician, and there's, let's say they've said that this politician, let's say they just, how can I say it? Let's say they said that the politician is really bad at their job. They're shit, basically, right? And let's say it's Jacinta Allen. Let's say I say I think Jacinta Allen, you're doing a really terrible job today. I don't like what you're doing, Jacinta Allen, and I think you should be sacked. Right? Imagine now I'm being charged because I upset at Jacinta Allen, right? Because it was likely to cause her harm, right? So, no, just waiting for it to load. So this is the Mirandorandum. I'm going to download the PDF because I like it better. Now, is that likely to cause harm? Is that what the meaning of this bill is to do? Is the meaning of this bill to govern me holding politicians to account, right? But your client has now been charged with this in this scenario, right? Your client has been charged under this act. It's mock, right? It's mock, right? Um, and they're being charged for telling Jacinta Allen that they don't like the job she's doing, or trying to hold her to account, or call Gladys Berejiklian out for the corruption, right? And let's say now Gladys Berejiklian now wants to turn around and go, well, no, someone, maybe it's someone that follows Gladys, like maybe it's a Liberal fan or someone like that, and they go, oh no, that's most likely to cause harm, right? Is it not working? How's it? Oh, download Word then. If it's not working, hopefully it works. They don't want to share it with me for some reason. It's still trying to load it. I don't know why I want to share it. That's a bugger. I was hoping I could show. I could choose something else anyway. It doesn't really matter if this one's not going to work. It's not going to show it. So generally, you'll have parliamentary memorandum where it doesn't want to bloody load. What's wrong with this? Look at that there. What's this? So let me read this for a second. Have I found it? Yeah, I have found it. Memorandum, haven't I? I'm just checking if it is. Okay. I do access all mode then, so I can read it. So we can all have a read of this. Sorry about this. It's just my parliament. The parliament is not liking me at the moment. They probably wish they'd really brought out that misinformation bill. Probably really thought that. No, but okay. So hopefully this is okay. Now it's working. All right. Sorry about that. All right. So I've got to zoom that in for me. So I'm really, really bad with my eyes. Okay. I can't read this now. Hey, Lizzie, if you give me a second, I need to get my glasses because I can't read. I get my glasses. I can't read that at all. It's so small. Yeah, thank you. I can't even read it at all. It's so bad. Sorry about that, because I can't read this. It's so small. Right. Download a PDF. It'd be even better. Thank you. I think I found it better. Appreciate it. All right. So this is one of the Mirandarandiums, right? And what we're trying to figure out is the language behind the meaning behind the language, vague language used in the word likely, right? So if we go back to this here, and I have here, we want to find out as lawyers what is likely mean, what reasonably likely. And as I've got so many questions in regard to this as well. One of my questions would be that is it enough to send someone to prison? Right? Because that's what this was going to be, right? Because our system is based on beyond reasonable doubt, right? So likely here, the likely seems to me more like a civil thing. Like more likely than not to cause harm, right? On the balance of probability, which is a civil case, not a criminal case, which they've lowered the standard of criminal law, right? Here, and this will be argued, really argued here, that likely. So I really want to find out what that means. So I want to go here. And I want to find out the outline of this. So the Communication Legislation Amendment Combating Misinformation Disinformation Bill, Broadcasting Act, to empower Australian Communications Media Authority to require digital communication platforms providers to take steps to manage the risk that misinformation, disinformation. Okay. What it will empower them to do. Context of the bill, the rapid spread of serious harmful misinformation challenges. Platforms enable users. So I'm just reading the same time as you. Sorry. Giving increasing resilience to 4 in 5 Australians say the spread of misinformation on social media needs to be addressed. Okay. The bill does not apply to professional news content that would reasonably be regarded as prodigy satire, nor reasonable dimension of content for any academic, artistic, scientific, or religious purposes. Additionally, the bill contains significant protections for freedom of expression. Okay, so it tells me here what this bill will not do. It should not go towards satire or parody, okay, which is here, which is important, right? So parody and satire would it has to be reasonably regarded as parody or satire. Yeah, that's vague, very vague. Um, the other thing it doesn't protect is political speech, like protesting against politicians as well. So, yeah, it doesn't protect that, does it? See what else it does for huge impact on the illnesses. Okay, so harm the integrity of the Australian electoral process. Okay, so misinformation, disinformation of content digital communication platforms that among contains information that is reasonably verifiably false, misleading, or deceptive. Reasonably, yet again, reasonably, or like reasonably likely. You go put that reasonably likely. We have to put that. It is reasonably likely. That's vague language again. Reasonably likely. What? Reasonably, verifiably false. Okay. Cause or contribute. Cause or contribute. Contribute's important because I just told Jacinta Allen that she's doing a shit job to cause serious harm with far-reaching consequences. That you harm the operation of the integrity of the Australian electoral process. Okay, so I've mocked a politician, so I'll mark that. I've done that. Harm the public health of Australia. Vilification of a group. Australians, okay, gender identity, sex, disability, blah, blah, blah. Intentionally inflict physical injury to an individual in Australia. Well, that's mate. I tell you, if you inflict a physical injury on someone, that's already a crime. So, yeah, this is about the stuff you post online, and I'm saying that the people haven't actually. I wonder if the lawyers have even. Okay, so these are our current protections. We've got the right to security of a person, the right to participate in public affairs, vote, to be elected a genuine periodic reason, the right to protect it against discrimination. What about political speech? Right to privacy is another one. This has been targeted at the moment, the right to privacy. Right to security of a person. Okay, that's fine. So, false or misleading, deceptive information that is likely to result in physical injury to individuals might include incitement of violence, a smear campaign, targeting prominent individuals, political persons, of wrongdoing or causing public outrage. So that's what this client's done. So by telling Jacinta Allen that she's done a really shit job, I'm smearing her basically. At what point does this become that? Because I do this all the time. I say things about laws that are stupid, and okay. So Article 25 provides that every citizen shall have the right and the opportunity without unreasonable restriction to take part in conduct of public affairs directly through freely chosen representatives. So I would use this here, Article 25, when I'm arguing in court. The reason why I would use this. Okay, so Article 25 gives every citizen the right to any opportunity without unreasonable restriction to take part in public conduct affairs directly through freely chosen representatives. How are you supposed to take part in that conduct if it's restricted online? How are you supposed to tell a politician? So in the situation, I'm trying to gather as much information as I can to support my argument to the judge. And I'm going to say, well, this person has a right to express this and to freely engage in public conduct with with their chosen representatives, right? So it's actually a protected speech already. So this bill, I would argue, violates that, right? So if I get rid of these for a second, I'm just going to get this back. Get rid of that for a second. So if I go to delete it. Let's see if I can find my mock assessment. Let's go to this for a second. Open this up. Alright. Let's just do this because this is what I've asked everyone to do. All right, so this is what I want you to do. And that's why it's important that I showed you that. Right, because this has a scenario where Mark was riding a bicycle through Greenfield Park enjoying the sunny afternoon. As he cycled through the path, as he cycled along the path, a park ranger spotted him and instructed him to stop immediately. The ranger informed Mark that bicycles were prohibited under the Parks Regulation Act of 2024 and issued him a fine of $200. Mark argued that the legislation was unclear about whether bicycles fell under the definition of vehicles and that there were no signs indicating the prohibition of. He's now seeking a legal advice from you, basically, all right? So in order to help this person, you've got to do a couple of different relevant things. One, as you see here, these are the relevant provisions that I've given you under this MOC Act, right? The MOC does exist, but this is just a hypothetical scenario, just to get you to understand how to interpret an act, basically. Right. So here you'll find a definition of an act. So how does it define a vehicle? It includes any device propelled by human, mechanical, or other means intended for transport of people or goods. And it says public pathways are trails, paths designated for public use within a park, right? Now, on section 12, it says no person shall operate a vehicle within the boundaries of a designated park. Two exceptions: vehicles used by park staff for maintenance and devices explicitly permitted by park signage. All right. So, can we think of anything that this law would cause absurdity with? What do you think can be classed as a vehicle? Right? I can think of a few things right now. One, the first one is that here it says that must be propelled by a person, right? Propelled by a human, mechanical or other means. So would a pram fall under that? Absolutely, a pram would fall under this. So are prams now allowed in the park? Okay. Bicycles. So basically, you got to get down to: is this what the act is? Is this what Parliament meant by this act? Right? Is this the right thing? Is it right? So what I've done is if we go down to I put a parliamentary memorandum in, all right, and it discusses insights into its intent behind the legislation. Obviously, I made it easier. I showed you an example on the Parliament website as well. So it says the purpose of this act is to ensure safety and enjoyment of the parks by pedestrians to preserve natural habitats. The term vehicle is intended to be interpreted as to reduce carbon emissions in the park region. Now, does a bike emit carbon emissions? I would say no, it absolutely doesn't. I would say that this act is best served to restrict motorized vehicles that disperse carbon emissions into the environment. That the bicycle is not what the intent of this act was to do. Now, I want you to use I love saying this, ICRAC method, and take your time with this. And I really want you to focus on finding any bill in the memorandum. You can do this with anything. If I shared my screen, entire screen, so I'm just going to share my entire screen for a second. I'm just going to share my entire screen. I'm just going to go to where am I going? Here. Right, so if I go to Australian Parliament and I want to find out any bill. You can do this with any bill, past, present, or future. So I want to go to bills. I want to browse any bill. So I can search any bill. So let's go. Let's go to P. I don't know. Let's go anyone. V. I wonder what's under V. Venture capital bill. Okay, let's go this. It's in its first reading. Okay. So any bill here, see the explanatory memorandum here and speeches. This is going to help you understand what the meaning of the bill is, what they mean by this, what is their target to do for this legislation. So the legislation, sometimes when it comes out of Parliament, it doesn't always, it's not always perfect, right? And sometimes they do things wrong. They always, which is fair enough because it's complicated. So what Parliament desired it to do, right? And you could do this with any bill. So if I go back and I go to F, right? Fair prices, petroleum bill. Okay, let's just go for that. This one's not proceeding either. So this one's got no proposals because it must have got voted down just instantly. Fair Work Organisation Amendment Bill. Okay, let's read this. Okay, so if we go to speeches, minister recording speeches, reading speeches, so you can go here as well. These can all inform your decision. So you can see the speeches here, all right? And I don't know if you can read these, but if I zoom them in a little bit more, you can see where Mr. Bill Shorten, which is the Minister for Financial Affairs, says that the government believes in free and independent trade union movement. The government believes that advocacy of employer organisations on the behalf of their members. So I could see what they're saying in Parliament, right? I could say what their intent is to do. It's intent. What do you intend for this to be, right? What was the intent behind this bill? And that's going to be a greatest weapon when you're looking at statutory interpretation, especially when you're going to come across legislation that I showed you that's very vague. And Mm, that's okay. Let's just go there. Um, so if we go to, I want to show you that for the misinformation bill as well, because I did show you that today. Maybe it's okay. So let's go to speeches. Alright, so this is a summary of all the speeches that were done. The second reading. So let's just have a look at the second reading speeches. So, okay, let's just have a look at this for a second. Okay, second reading is gonna load. Not. It won't load it. Interesting. Oh, there we go. Okay, we've got something here. For the misinformation, disinformation bill. All right. So this is tiny writing, but you can find this yourself. It says that Senator McCarthy for the Northern Territory Minister speech incorporated. Okay, so introduction. The Communication Legislation Amendment combating misinformation, disinformation bill amend a current bill. Right. The bill will increase transparency and accountability. Digital platforms enable end users in Australia, around the world, blah 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 blah. Misinformation, disinformation about stabbing attacks in Bondi Beach. That's very specific. Okay, so the types of serious harm in the bill are harm to the operation and integrity of electoral referendum process in Australia. So basically, what this means here is that we recently had a referendum, and this referendum was around the Indigenous Treaty. And basically, what a referendum is just basically a public vote. And a lot of the time during that, a lot of people came from both sides. A lot saying no, this is why we shouldn't have it, and the other side was saying yes, we shouldn't have it. So what they're saying is that if you interfere in the integrity of a referendum, they don't even say the language that would consider it to be that, because anything could be so. Even Jacinta Price could say, "This is why we shouldn't do it because I'm Australian and you're going to leave me out." Well, that could be also considered to be interfering in the operation or the integrity of a referendum. Um, it can cause harm to public health, the efficiency of preventative health measures. So they're obviously trying to combat people during the COVID. So they're obviously trying to say, okay, well, now you can't speak out if there's anything else like COVID again, even though what they did was wrong. They know it's wrong, and they're going to punish you. They're trying to punish you for it, basically, for having these opinions. Okay, Code of Standard Protection of Freedom of Expression. Important protections of freedom to ensure it strikes the right balance between upholding freedom of expression and combating misinformation. The bill carefully calibrated definitions of serious harm that align with Australian international human rights obligations. The bill does not apply professional news content or content that could be regarded as satire parody. So then it doesn't protect your political speech. So if I have a speech towards a politician and I don't like what they're doing, it's not protecting that, right? That's why this is dangerous. It's a dangerous bill, but if I went to tell Jacinta Allen that she's doing a shit job, which she is, right, that could be considered to be misinformation, disinformation, because it's not protecting my speech in politics. So it even protects, specifically here, it even protects, trying to protect just academic, artistic, and scientific and religious purposes, right? So it's kind of showing you how you can. Okay, so the bill, for example, House of Representatives make technical corrections. So they're trying to correct it. Academic and comedians do not get an exemption now. So here, so academics and comedians do not get an exception for everything they say online. Okay. So now we're attacking academics. We're attacking academics now, right? So academics. So we're attacking academics, right, and comedians now. Okay. Public debates and interest rates or economy policies are not intended to be captured. Oh, that's not our intent, but you don't protect it. You don't explicitly protect it, even though it's not your intent. You're not protecting it, right? You see what I'm saying? It's not protected. It's not exclusively protection. But anyway, I'll leave it at that because I'll let you all go through that on your own. Now, if you have any issues with that or any questions or any debates, and you'd like to consider going into the topic a little bit more, just drop a line. You've got my email, and I'll leave it there so I don't keep you all day. I hope you found that interesting.